I decided to record this part as well, since it was the first time I'm referring to this approach, that engineering approach, that optimization approach, that efficiency approach. So here you can see how it works. So with that perspective that I discussed in the previous video, we notice that everything that on the left is repeated in the right, so 0. So what is the number that we come up here? It is 0. Okay, now we go on the right. For the right, first we calculate the payment of that 3,500, because we don't need to calculate that 10,000 part of it, because it is common, and since it is about comparison, we don't need to use common parts in our comparison. So here we get, and another things that we have is that gradient present value, that here we are doing it, as you can see, and after that we get the payment of this present value, and finally summation of these two things. So we get 78.86. And of course, since now device B is offering higher payment in comparison to device A, we are going to choose that. But one question, you notice here that the payment is $78 more than the payment of A here in this new calculation, because one of them is 0, so it's very easy to calculate the difference of the other one, 78.88. And here, when I do the calculation with the previous approach, 639 minus 561, again we get the same number. And again, it is the beauty of financial models. They have high level of modularity. Just be careful when you are detaching them, when you are disassembling them, in making them smaller, tackle them, and finally when you finish everything, you assemble them together like an engineer. An example for annual cash flow, when the useful life of the alternatives are different. And I told you before that it is the advantage of annual cash flow analysis over the present value, because it becomes way less sensitive regarding the useful lives. Why? Because you are comparing annual cost or annual savings, and the comparison becomes too much independent of the lifetime. Because let me show you this. For example, one of them is 5 years, the other one has 7 years. Okay, so if it is 5 years and it is 7 years, if you are using present value, of course you need to go and compare them for 35 years of cash flow. But when you are using annual cash flow, here we have 5 and here we have 7. Okay, like that it goes, and 15, 10. So what happens when you are calculating the annual? So it would be here like 5, but after that again it's gonna repeat the same thing, even if you continue for 1,000 years. So you don't need to go for that lowest common multiple. Just you calculate the annual and compare the annual if it makes sense in terms of time, because you see there is no specific end time in the horizon, in the financial horizon. So that's the best way, that's the best situation that you can use annual cash flow. So here you have another case. As you can see, it doesn't talk about the end of project, so it seems that unlimited initial cost for pump 8, you are familiar with this case because you have already done it with present value technique. So now go ahead and try do it. It should be a very simple example for you. You have initial cost, you have the salvage value, also you have the useful life. Calculate the annual cash flow for this, and also calculate the annual cash flow for B. Anyone that is higher, you are going with that. Stop the video and work on it. I hope you have reached the right answer when you're comparing it with this slide in front of you. And okay, the annual cash flow for pump A is 700 something, and for pump B is 600 something. So we go with pump A, that is 12 years. After doing this example, most probably you have come up with these correct answers, and you are wondering what is the logic behind these two formulas. It is one of those financial innovations. When you get deeper understanding of the topic, you many times do this type of maneuvers that feels you are in control. So absolutely, it is not something mandatory or necessary to go and do this type of risky analysis, because they are prone to mistake if you miss one subtle point anywhere in your calculations. But this type of calculations that you go with the PMT, with your Excel, they are almost guaranteed that you get the correct answer. But let me also explain to you what's happening for those of you who are curious about that. Since you are calculating the annual cash flow, anything that you can spread over the lifetime period would work. Let me show you what's happening here. Here you have, let's go for pump A, $7,000 initial cost, and you have after 12 years salvage value of 1,500. Now you are wondering, how come these two things, one of them belongs to now time 0 and the other one to time period 12, they are subtracted from each other? It doesn't make sense. You are right. But pay attention that because of the rigor, the theoretical rigor that the financial manager who wrote this had, they have said to themselves, okay, this 7,000, I'm gonna transfer this 1,500 to here. Okay. But what would be the first objection to this movement? Time value. What you are gonna do with the time value? 1,500 at year 12, at the end of year 12, it's not equal to the time value of 1,500 now. So that person would say, I'm going to pay the interest rate for that. So 1,500 getting back to here. So times 7%. Solve the problem. So yes, when you pay the interest rate and it is annual cash flow, you can move these things very easily anywhere you like. And that is another advantage of annual cash flow. Because you said that 1,500 now, it is in year 12. I don't want it over there. I want to bring it on year 0. They said that no, the time value is different. You are going to say, I'm going to pay for that interest rate. What is the interest rate yearly? 1,500 times 7%. Beautiful, isn't it? Another things that you may wondering when you are looking at this innovative answer is that why 7,000 is positive while it is initial cost, and other things that they have used. So you see, every example that we are reviewing here, my friends, they have some points inside it. Never pass any example quickly, easily, without depth, without checking the details. There is for sure some new points for you to learn from. So, because here it is not calculating the annual cash flow. Here it is calculating the annual cost. EUAC is a famous acronym that we have, equivalent uniform annual cost. So it goes with the cost. 7,000 is a cost, so it is positive. 1,500 is salvage value, it is revenue, so it is negative. And the interest rate you are paying is cost, so it is positive. Another way that I can tell you how you can recognize if you need to consider interest as revenue or as cost, let me tell you this. 1,500 here, that is revenue, you are bringing it at 1,500 here, correct? So the value of this 1,500 is way more than this 1,500 at the end of year 12. So what you need to do to make them balance these first, not logical things, not acceptable things we did, so you are gonna pay the interest rate for that. So it's gonna handle, balance this increase that you considered for your income. The same logic has been used here. 5,000 is the initial cost, 1,000 is the salvage value. They bring it here, but they pay the annual interest rate for that 9 years transfer of that, but they pay exactly 9 years annual interest. If you have liked the idea of annual cash flow analysis, you would love this example, because you will notice that now the only way you can handle this type of challenges, cases, question is annual cash flow analysis. We have two cases, two alternatives for doing a civil engineering project. One is making a tunnel and the other one is making a pipeline. Now, for the comparison, the initial cost of making a tunnel is $5.5 million. No maintenance cost. Useful life is permanent. What about the salvage value? 0. For the pipeline, the initial cost is 5 million, maintenance is 0, and useful life is 50 years. So it means that at the end of 50 years, you need to do another $5 million for the following 50 years, just under assumption that all the costs and everything are the same, for example. And the salvage value is also 0. Of course, there is a way to calculate it accurately, but use your instinct. If you were a person without any knowledge of all those calculations, you learn which option was your choice, tunnel or pipeline? To be honest with you, okay, now let me not tell you the first time I answered this question what was my answer. You just try to do that and come up with the answer, and after that stop the video because I'm going to show you the answer shortly, and try to do it and of course, my friends, since it is infinite life cycle, because when you want to compare these two things, since one is permanent, one is 50 years, you still are not ready to do it through present value. But now you already know everything to do this analysis, to do this comparison with annual cash flow analysis. So use everything you have learned with annual cash flow and compare these two things. Annual cash flow works here because you just need, in these two cases, calculate the annual cash flow and compare them. Remember, for this one, it's very easy for you to calculate the cash flow. 5 million now for 50 years. Just calculate the cash flow. This one is a little bit tricky and needs you to go deeper inside your financial intelligence to get the answer. Stop the video. Here is the answer for pipeline. Let's start with the straight one because it was something that we are familiar with. Paying $5 million at the beginning of the project as initial cost for 50 years, and the rate is 6%. What is the PMT for that? $317,000, 221. But for the tunnel, the answer would be this. Just the interest rate for, just the interest payment for that $5,500,000. Why it is that way? And it is 330,000, and of course it's better for us to go with pipeline. For the tunnel part, that why these two things are equal. See, at this point you are paying 5.5 million, and after that you want to create annual cash flow forever. Correct? So why it is that way? Just I want to give to you something that practically makes sense to you. Of course, when we go forward more in this class, you are going to understand all the things better and better. So I don't want to confuse you with mathematical calculations or anything. But see, you have two ways. Pay all the payment now, and if you don't want to pay it now, you need to pay the interest rates. Very similar to the previous case that we had, that it brought that $15,000, I guess, at the year 12 back to zero. It says that since you want to bring it here, you need to pay the interest rate for that. So that's the easy part of annual cash flow, that you can move big payments, one period, two period, infinite period, or any time. Okay, but you need to pay the interest for that period. Very easily, that for example, they tell you, can you pay off this last month? You say that, oh no, I'm sorry, I cannot pay off this last month. Okay, no problem, you can pay it next month. we are not gonna give you any penalty, but you need to pay the interest rate for that. Makes sense? So exactly the same thing here happens. You say that this 5.5, I don't want to pay it now. I want to send it to the infinite time. So they said that no problem. You need to pay us the interest rate. What is the interest payment? 5.5 million times 6%. So that's the point. You may ask, what happens to this 5.5 million if I need to pay it after infinity? In infinity, you don't need to worry about any payment, because the value of that payment in infinity now is 0. Let me show you so you can see it better. See, the present value of that 5.5 million that you are going to pay in infinity, correct? The rate is 6%. Let's specify the number of terms here. PMT 0. And what is the future value? The future value that you are going to pay after infinity okay. Now we are going to see if we are going to pay this $5.5 million after 10 years, what does it mean now? Okay, it means that now it is 3 million. Okay. What about, and remember, infinity is infinite. It is not 10, 20, 50, 100. I want to explain to you why that. Just go and calculate the interest payment. Okay, we go for 20. After 20 years, the value of that 5.5 is 1.7. Let's go with 40. Just 500,000. 50. Just $298,000. And that's the reason you see the pipeline is better. Because after 50 years, another investment of 5.5 million is the same as investment of now 298. So you are checking the difference now. Okay, what about 100? Remember, we are working on infinity. Just 16,000. What about 200? Just $47. So don't get surprised when you are seeing in old movies that, for example, they are seeing a very small amount of money can do a lot. Even when, for example, you are seeing it in some movies. For example, just imagine a movie 1946. It goes to 80 years ago. Am I right? Yeah. About 80 years ago. And that's the time value of money. And I'm showing you 5.5 million, 200. And it's just try to convince you that in infinity you shouldn't be worried about that 5.5 and just go for the interest rate. And just to show you some other calculations, I'm going to show you here 500 and you see it is 0. $400, 0. $300, just 14 cents now. So, long story short, don't worry about the future value of that money that you are supposed to pay after infinite amount of time, because it is 0.